Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today, I've got someone I'm a huge fan of on the show. I'm pumped to be able to do this. We tried earlier in the summer, but I think you were on a dock and I was in a giant conference room. We got Joyce today from Cudmore's Landscape and Design. Will, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here, Rob.
Sweet. You have a crazy story with a lot of depth to it. So maybe for the sake of the beginning, we'll just do Cole's notes summary of like what you've been up to over the last couple of years, like 10 years, and how you got to where you are right now, just to give people an idea of who they're listening to, and then we can get into the whole conversation.
For sure. So I'm the second generation owner of Cudmore's Landscape and Design. Our roots they go back to 1986 when our family opened a retail garden center in Oakville. I participated in that, like many people in family businesses, and sort of grew up in it. But it was never my intention to come into the business. I went to University of Ottawa, sort of went through a path that led me into not-for-profit, worked in advertising for 4 years or so, all the while summers and whatnot, landscaping and growing up, sort of building that foundation of knowledge and exposure to the business. And 2017, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and sort of this really unique opportunity to pause your life, step outside of it, and gain some perspective. And the thing that became really crystal clear to me at that time was I want to be in my family business. I want to be working with my hands in the soil. That's what I want to do. And that's what I did. I rode out of it. I was cancer free by the end of the year. The rest is history. I jumped in with both feet.
Awesome. So today, and like every show, we talk about what's the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry. So, we'll definitely have to address that question. But there's also a whole other point that we're going to get to around what is it like transitioning a second generation business, and how does that work with the first generation, and taking over the steering wheel so that way you can do what you want, and what did you end up doing? So that's kind of the two layers of the interview today, just so people can kind of understand what's coming.
For sure. So I'll hit on the generational thing first. So a couple of reasons I was really fortunate. The original owners, John, Kev, my dad, Peter, they were actually already in motion to retire, and me coming in sort of as a late entrant. They had sold the garden center, the land, and really moving on to the next thing. And they were just thrilled for me to come in and continue on some version of the business. And B, they gave me complete and full permission to make it my own. And they had a trust and belief in me, and they knew it was going to work. It was going to be my thing. And we had to move locations, which was an early challenge, but also this gift of I got to take over an established community business with great brand equity, a great reputation, but also it was infused with sort of this startup mentality because we had a new location. We didn't have a retail frontage. How are we reaching our customers now? I got the best of both worlds. I got to hustle, and I got to sort of have this nice starting point where people knew me and knew us. So that was sort of my launch pad, and great support and advice from the first generation. But yeah, that was sort of the launching pad, how it all worked. I was very lucky. I know a lot of multi-generational things. There's a bit more complexity.
Complexity is good to say.
Yeah. And then to sort of segue to the second part of that. So the growth constraint, obviously no one's coming on this, spent a bit of time on this. I think for me, and going through that process, I had to learn to trust people and delegate way more effectively. And so I kind of, if I were to like label that, it's almost, I had to do the work on me and finding my footing and bringing people in before I could even worry about the systems and the expansion of our programs. And, that's ongoing. I certainly don't come on this podcast as like, I'm not a 40-year vet who's sort of on the other end reflecting back. Like I'm in it. I'm in the growth trajectory and trying to figure things out every day. But the first 3 years were me finding my footing. Like I said, I kind of started over. There was a bit of a turnover. I was pretty intentional about the culture that I kind of wanted to rebuild a little bit. And so, yeah, I had to hustle. Like I was year one, I was selling the work. I was screeding the patio. I was laying the stone, figuring all that stuff out, trying to balance my time. And now it's just a bigger version of that, where this is our 6th year under me, and we're 3 times as big top line, which is awesome. We're really excited about that. My thing has always been growing, but doing it the right way with great people. And great people won't stick around if they're not trusted and given the opportunity to grow. So those first 3 years, I really had to find a way to trust people, and I had some awesome people pushing me along to do that. So
Amazing. So then, going back to what you kind of said there about, working on yourself, getting your footing, learn to trust and delegate. Like, how does that show up? Like, what did you do, and what kind of, learning or insight did you go through in order to get to that
yeah,
spot?
yeah. So my leadership example growing up was I got to watch firsthand what my dad achieved on the landscape design side. And he is a force of nature, and real horticultural roots. I'm going to will this to be sort of thing. And when I came on and my skill set, what I had to identify was I was going to succeed in a different way, which was about team building, delegation, and sort of expanding the aperture of what was possible with our company by sharing the responsibility. And I think I reflect too a lot that I have the luxury, the privilege to be able to do that, because I know, for example, my dad, starting out in the 80s and all the different economic conditions they had to navigate, and young kids at home, and knew how all that stuff, like he had to will it to be, and what he built and with his partners was incredible. But the process I had to go through is going to be a different way of getting to that same result with quality and all that stuff with me. So yeah, I kind of had to figure that out early on, that I'm going to have to bring people in, and I'm going to have to do it a different way. I can't be exactly what he was. I can embody maybe some of the best things and treat people the same way, and yeah, value all the service things. All that stuff still shows up, but it's just done and executed differently.
Right. So then, when you said you had to learn to trust,
Mm-hmm.
how'd you figure that out? Like, I mean, I know a lot of folks, they listen to this, and there's, from one mentality is, if you're going to do it right, do it yourself. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like, it's tough to build people up, and they're not going to be able to do it necessarily as good as I can, so I'll keep this, and maybe I'll give them a couple things to do. And then there's like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, I'm going to find people that are smarter than me, and they're going to go do things, and I'm going to trust fully, even though maybe I've been burned once or twice. Like, how did you learn to
Stranger?
trust?
Yeah. So there's a little bit out of necessity, because, like I said, day one on my restart, I was screening patios, I was selling. Pretty quickly, you're aware of your limitations. And I also, from day one in my restart, I had a great, she wasn't at that time, but she came on, Jen, who we just very happily said goodbye to. She's on to the next chapter for her. But she came on from day one and just ground in the trenches with us. And she was hungry to make it a career. And, I wanted to keep Jen. I wanted to keep great people. And if I just kept it sort of static and only what I could sell and do, and was so fixated on the quality that I had to have a hand on in terms of output of the work and stuff, Jen wasn't going to stick around. The next person wasn't going to stick around. The next great hire that I was going to make. So it was really driven out of necessity. And I do give Jen a lot of credit. Our relationship had to really sort of expand as we went. So I give her a ton of credit for how she expedited that. We had a great goodbye party for her the other day, and I looked around at now we're about 15 people or so, and at that we restarted at 3, and I just said there's a lot of opportunities that I give her credit for forging forward and creating for everyone else. So it was, I don't know, I read a lot of books and listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm a bit of like an industry and growth and entrepreneurial nerd, and I can't remember where it exactly came from, but there's one person who sort of said if you can delegate and that person can do it 80% better or as good as you can do it, that is good because then it frees you up to do the right thing that you should be working on. And it's not to say our quality is waning. I'm really happy to say now that our field staff are better at landscape construction than me. That was kind of my early goal, like have field staff who can do it better than me. And now we're at that stage. And so it's that continual assessment of what it is I should be doing, which is right now, sales and growth and strategy. And then, figuring out how you disperse the other hats.
That's cool. So I mean, like when you say now, like at a team of 15 and say, close to 2 million ish revenue wise, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
You're focused on sales and growth and strategy. But when you were 3 people, you were, quoting, selling, laying brick, maybe even sending an invoice.
Yeah.
Can you just walk through maybe 1 or 2 key things that you had to do in order to make that transition from in the field to growth and strategy?
Define my standards a little bit so that someone else could understand the mark they're shooting for, and give people space to make their own mistakes, because I made a ton to figure out my own stuff. And obviously, you get bigger and there's expectations, and so you want to have guardrails with that. But yeah, to jump back to the example with Jen, our former employee, like she really dug into sales at one point too, and that was also something I had to let go of. Like I kind of felt I had this stewardship and I was the face of the second generation company, but again, just kind of letting go to say, you know what, this version is going to have the best of what generation 1 had, but it's going to be different. And Jen's a great representation of, for example, our company. So giving people space to do different roles, and that's something I haven't mastered. It's an ongoing process, like most entrepreneurial things are. But giving people space to fail too, and succeed, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I love it. And the one thing you said at the beginning there was define your standards, which I think is a critical piece in any company's growth. How did you do that, and how did you communicate it for folks? Like if I'm sitting there, in that spot as an entrepreneur, being like, I need actually, I haven't defined my standards for the team. It's not clear what I expect of folks and myself. I want to do that. What's one of the things you did to bring that to life?
Yeah, one of the big things we did, because I'll admit, my strengths are more people and like I said, like team building and that end of things, and maybe on systems and like really tight type A type organization, I'm not as strong. So that's sort of something that's in my head as I'm team building. But what I did was we did a pretty thorough values exercise, and that was really important. I'm a pretty heavy participant in Landscape Ontario and Employers of Choice, and through that part, we were really encouraged to get into that. And we did that, and it helped us articulate what it is that's important to us and kind of how it shows up, and really the baseline, how we treat people. Because that was honestly maybe the most important thing to me. I think a lot of people can do really great landscape work, but to us, sort of defining like it's the how that really matters to us, and then just baseline how we treat people. One of the biggest things that I think is like the wisest thing my dad passed along to me and had it written on the whiteboard in our old barn is the work is secondary, the human experience trumps all. And it's me, like I said, he had a different experience, a different path, but I just think that is like the clearest definition of what we're doing here.
That's amazing. And I couldn't agree more, right? Because the human experience, if you're actually going to elevate it really well, also includes good work. But if we keep that person in mind the whole time, we're not building for the sake of building. We're building for the sake of people. I think that's brilliant. And I think the greatest ideas are simple, and when they're well stated, that's pretty amazing. You mentioned that you went through a thorough values exercise. Talking to thousands of entrepreneurs over the years, I've heard, a massive spectrum of values exercises, some of them being complete crap. They end up on a board or something like that on a wall in a room, and they mean nothing because they're not lived out properly. To people that authentically, live by, speak about, hire, fire, coach on values. And so what does a thorough values exercise look like for folks? Like, how do they know if they're going into it the right way?
Yeah, we pulled the team into it, and it was not a top-down exercise. That was like one of the most important things. It wasn't just going to be me spitting it out and said that this is what I think. We have an amazing designer, Erica, who's been with our family company for 25 years. So she worked alongside my dad and me. Jen at the time, we talked to our employees, and what we were trying to do is boil down, like, what is that secret sauce? I think most companies probably have that intangible, this is kind of what makes us us, but to go through the exercise of actually putting it into a tangible word, expression, line, it's really challenging. So we started broad and everything. We talked about who are our model employees, what is it about them that makes them so special, and just boil, kept coming back to it. And yeah, I think we spent quite a number of hours one winter trying to grind that down. And then I think that one of the most important things, once you feel like you have a succinct definition, is not, like you said, putting it up in your office and saying like, great, I'm glad we did that exercise. It's actually using it as a tool. Even in assessments, it can be a decision-making matrix for our staff. If there's a discussion or a situation on site and I'm unavailable, whoever their rec report or anyone as a resource is unavailable, okay, let's run this through our values. Like, if we make a decision based on these verticals, like, we'll probably end up in a good position aligned with the strategy of the company or the values. And then too, like, even in employee checkpoints, I think it was traction that says line up the capacity, the want, or the want to do it, the capacity to do it, gets it, wants it, can do it, whatever that is, and then line up all your values. And if someone's a clean sweep across the board, like, you have someone who's just roaring. And I think if there's not, that is usually a good sort of canary in the coal mine that this probably won't go anywhere great, or it's not a perfect match or a fit, or
which is okay.
Which is okay. Yeah, it's not a great fit. We're not a great fit for everyone. And that's, there's no hard feelings ever about that. And that's something that get more comfortable with as you go.
Yeah, it's amazing. When you talk about using like as a tool, so it actually comes to life. I think that's when it becomes really magical for folks, because if you're using it like a tool and it's inauthentic, it'll be useless. Like, this isn't actually us. I know with Intrigue, when we first did a values exercise, it wasn't very fruitful. And we went through it. It was in the end though, because 5-6 months later, we realized these values are they're not us. And so it was like a juxtaposition by going through it. And then we were like, okay, if we're gonna actually use these things, they got to be authentic, so it's easy to live by. Because I find that once you have authentic values in place and inside an organizational setting, it's really easy to just do it, because that's what you value all the time.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And I was going to say, give yourself permission too to kind of check in with them. Just like you said, like, you might go through an exercise that felt really true, but 5 years down the road, not to say your values shift around, but some new ones may be in there, or something else that you need to modify. Your company, all companies are sort of living, breathing things that expand and things shift. And
I mean, even in ours, we have an acronym so that it's like memorable. It's CFLAT, so it's CFLLATT. But within that, there's 3 that I look at more than the rest. One of the things, and this is just something that if you want to do, you can. If you don't, if people are listening, they can too, or not, whatever. But we do it's called the CFLAT Awards at the end of the year, and everybody on the team anonymously ranks everybody on the team on a scale of 1 to 6, so there's no middle, on how well they live each core value every day. And then the scores get stack ranked. The winners get an award, and then somebody else on the team presents the award, kind of like an Oscars type of party.
That's so cool.
And it's so much fun.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a blast.
That's such a meaningful way to package it. I think at one point I was imagining our own version of the Dundies from The Office, or you could do the Cuddies. But I think this is a way more meaningful and strategic way to execute that. I think that's great.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
If you ever want to do it, I got a whole sheet and stuff like that with formulas that you make.
I'd love that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course, no worries. Okay, so I mean, it's clear that people are number one in the way that you're focused on your leadership style. As you've been learning about yourself and those around you, what would you say is like one of the big leadership lessons that you've learned going from 3 to 15 that maybe if you had known then you wouldn't have made that mistake?
Yeah, I think just having um, an awareness of how your role is going to change really quickly. What won't change as a business owner is, there's always going to be a variety of hats you wear. But I think me being even a bit more dialed than I was in terms of evolving the role I was in, and my focus and how I allocate my time. Um, so I've always had my to-do list organized in the Eisenhower matrix, like sort of important, not urgent, not important, blah blah blah. And I
Are you
recently
wait, take a quick second. Maybe not everybody's heard of that one. It's a good one. Just take a quick second. I think you skimmed
yeah,
over it, but I think it's worthwhile just mentioning for folks if they
okay.
haven't heard of it.
Yeah, so if you Google Eisenhower matrix, it's just 4 boxes, and there's a grid going or arrows going up and down on the top and bottom. And so on the top, the first box is important and urgent items, so things that should be on the top of your list that day. The second box going to the right is important, not urgent, and then the bottom left is what is it? Not important and urgent, and then the last box is not important, not urgent. And so what I've always tried to do, to varying degrees of success, like I'll admit there's the chaos of running a business, but is always organize my to-do list into that format. And just to help me prioritize and be more aware of how I was spending my time. Now, often that first box overflows. And what I was going to say is I just read, this is, I think a lot of people would have read this, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Humans. And I loved, like he sort of, for me, brought it to the next level where he talks about box 1 and 2. And as a leader in a business, you want to be in box 2 most of the time, doing the strategically important things, the relationship building, creating solutions so that box 1, urgent and important stuff, the fires, aren't overflowing all the time. And that's been a real focus for me, I think. And so I just, go like I said, going from someone reading and laying stone to now thinking about how we're organizing multiple streams of business and how we're sort of allocating resources and investing year over year on growth and roles and defining roles. Like there's a lot of that I'm working hard to get good at every day. But I think it's almost like I had to figure out that was going to come really fast as we grew. I just thought, we're going to grow and we're going to have people, it's going to be great, but it's how the roles change. I think just being really dialed into that is really important.
And so what was one of the biggest changes that you like maybe you didn't see right away?
Yeah, one of the things we realized and is that operations and sales is pretty tricky to blend a little bit. When you're the time and the frame of mind you need to be selling, estimating work, thinking about taking care of all these clients who are reaching out to you, in the spring rush or any other time of the year, we just found is really almost like a different part of your brain than getting into the trenches. Okay, here we go. Like here comes spring. Here's how we're going to execute. Here's how we're organizing our team. Like it's game day. Like every day you need to be, and it's a real, it seems obvious, but back to Jen and I at that time, we had blended roles, a little bit of ops, a little bit of sales, a little bit of ops, a little bit of sales.
Both of you.
We had to split them. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that there's a tangible example of some of the role definition we had to do.
Yeah, that's cool. And where were you at in terms of level of sales volume when you got to that? Like how big was the company when you decided to make that decision?
We're probably breaking through 1 million at that point. And
would you have done it earlier if you like looking back at it?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think maybe it would have been like 85-15, or maybe always a split maybe, but because there is, you're smaller, there is an element of all hands on deck. But I think I would have been more proactive about when I need to update my infrastructure, my roles. I want to be not just adjusting to what we feel today, but what's the next band and size that we're going to get to. So yeah, I would have and wanted, in retrospect, proactively been building those roles to accommodate the next growth cycle, what's going to happen the next 1 to 2 years. So yeah, I think earlier would have been a bit better, but not always the way.
No, of course. And well, hindsight's 2020, right? But I think it's important for people that are listening, if you're like 750,000 to a million and you've got people in blended roles, thinking about them as mutually exclusive roles might be worthwhile thinking about.
For sure.
And so, we go back to this question of what's the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back. It really seems like your answer, just to summarize, was getting your head right as a leader.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yes, I agree. Yeah, that is a good summation. I like it. Yeah, for small business, it starts with you. And I think back to Seven Habits, sort of taking responsibility for everything. You cannot be everywhere as a business, but you're responsible for creating the infrastructure and putting people in roles. And yeah, so for me to be in that right headspace of really setting things up and we just before hopping on the record, we're talking about surrounding myself with smart people to help me do that because I recognizing where my gaps are, being aware of what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and then surrounding myself with great people to help insulate that. Like that's all that stuff is about just knowing yourself, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, if you don't know yourself, it's tough to find people that are better than you at things that you are about, right?
Yeah.
So if you take this idea of responsibility, because that's essentially like, so when I ask this question, what's the primary growth constraint? I hear all sorts of answers. There's common answers. Like most common we hear is staff can't find anybody to work. Recently, sales, so lead flow has been low. But every once in a while you find a gem in people and they say it's the leader between their ears. There's other things like systems and sales processes that pop up that they're less common. What do you say to folks right now that are having a hard time recruiting? You talk about doing this values exercise and becoming an employer of choice and building an environment where people want to come. Like, has
Yeah.
it been difficult to find people, or have you found it like, not necessarily easy, challenging, but still successful?
We so when we became some of the things we did, we became a certified living wage employer 2 or 3 years ago, and that's reflective of our values. I want sustainable careers for people, but what that did is it threw away my early thinking of being scared. Can we afford this? Can we? That felt like a turning point when we started having a floor of here's our wage point, and and then sort of also what that says about us as a company, our values. Um, and then I think for us, like, and a lot of this again stems from employers of choice and all the different peer groups we're part of, and like we needed to cultivate more than just here's the wage, here's the job description, punch in, punch out. Because like some of my peers who I talk to who are struggling finding people, it's like, yeah, they're just trying to get someone who just wants to just on a
Do the
higher
job.
number. It's a total package that needs to be cultivated, I think, and it's something I continue to work on. But things beyond just like standard benefits that people don't have to pay in for, like a living wage, an opportunity for growth, that has to be sort of highlighted and shown. And for us, I think there's like this sort of that I try and cultivate, like this entrepreneurial spirit a little bit, like a lot is possible. And you can really grab your role by the horns and really make it what you want to. And what I'm really interested in is obviously aligning people's career goals with their own aspirations. With the company's strategic focus. But I also, if someone's not energized by what they're doing, there's only so much time they're going to be with you. And so I really do try and understand and talk and listen what people want to be doing. We're really proactive in putting every single learning opportunity in front of everyone we can. We hire for people and not necessarily X years of landscape experience. So that means we lean on the apprenticeship program. We put people through the Grow supervisory program through Low. We have like a learning, we give everyone we contribute to everyone's courses in the winter or whatever else. Little things like we pay for everyone's Royal Botanical Garden membership every single year.
That's cool.
That's such a little novelty thing, but it's like passive learning. It's a beautiful space. It's good for mental health. But it's just, I think that where maybe the people are struggling to find people is it's just a number, just a job. And even if it is maybe more laborious or, like you're joining an irrigation company and you at your entry level role, you're trenching and you're supporting these amazing systems going in. I think like, what is it around the edges that makes someone really happy to be jumping into? Like, I think that's sort of the ticket for us. We haven't had difficulty finding people. There's always the assessment of fit. Sometimes someone you bring in and think might be a great fit, it's not, but for the most part, we haven't had that difficulty of finding people, which I feel really proud about.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what's beautiful in the way that you described it, it almost reflects to the T that same expression on the whiteboard in the barn. Like, what was that your dad wrote?
Yeah, the work is secondary, the human experience trumps all.
You know what I mean? Like, even the way you
Mhm.
just described the staff experience, it fits that perfectly. Um, and
Appreciate
I
that.
think that's something people miss is that sales and marketing for customers fundamentally is exactly the same as recruiting, training, and onboarding staff members. And I just don't think a lot of people necessarily look at it the same way. And
Yeah,
actually, if you were to really look at it, you could argue that the team part is more important than the customer part because a team member helps so many customers, especially over
yeah,
many years. I just think that there's a lot of folks that can take a lot away from what you just said there on recruiting and
yeah,
building an organization you want
absolutely.
to work at.
Awesome.
So if you go from this recruitment thing, and then I mean, sales and marketing this year has been softer for folks, so people aren't booked out as far. Lead flows may be down, or the job sizes aren't the same. Uh, it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a
So, yeah, for sure. So, um, I spoke a little earlier about sort of knowing yourself, knowing your blind spots,
excuse me.
and identifying where you need to surround yourself with smart consultants, smart team members, smart allies. We've taken on a lot of partners this year, and it sort of felt like the right timing for all of it, and I felt very aligned with everyone we brought on. So, not to lay it on too thick, but one of those key partners is your team, yourself.
I appreciate it.
And
I don't usually get a chance to do this on these
yeah,
podcasts.
yeah. So we connected last fall at a peer conference, and again, I have a bit of an advertising background, and coming from outside the industry, what I really appreciated about your presentation and your approach is it isn't totally insular and cultivated just within the bubble of landscape. You are, I think you could drop yourself. I know you have a niche, but you could drop your approach and your thought processes and your people into any industry, and you are smart and you would succeed. And that I just felt like those are the people I want to align myself with, and I was really thrilled it worked out. And on the sales and marketing side, I felt the legwork we did last winter, take the time to go through, set up our landing page, set up our marketing program, set up the infrastructure and how we understand our KPIs, all that stuff made me so much more comfortable going through this year with a lot of discussion about uncertainty. And I know people are having varying experiences um, with qualified leads and pipelines. And I have felt that our success is in our court because the leads are showing up. And that's a huge credit to your team, who are all smart and really great to work with. Um, and some of the other stuff we did, like I've talked about what my strengths are. It's not necessarily strength in numbers. We've started a great partnership with Southbrook Consulting and Nathan over there, who have really helped us with monthly reporting, understanding exactly where we're standing, and having information in hand to ground my gut feel on things and make informed decisions.
Cool.
And we worked with George from Knowledge Tree, who I think has been on your podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
George Uvari, who's such a character, such a smart guy, and so dialed on efficiency and systems. And again, not my strength, right? So I have this, there's such an opportunity to do this in our industry and with our peer group in Landscape Ontario. But I have this great, just sort of group of people around us who I can lean on and I can gut check. And I think, oftentimes people talk about entrepreneurialism and owning a business can be lonely. And I think there's so much opportunity to just build a network that build a sort of an informal board of governors or people you really rely on to sort of drive things forward. So I feel like we've had to hustle our butts off this year for sure, like everyone, and as per usual. But like I said, we felt that the ball has been in our court. So yeah, it's good on that front.
It's huge, man. And one of the things I'd love for you to touch on quickly, because when we met, it was September of last year.
Yep.
And you were starting to get into like planning for 2025 in September,
Mhm.
whereas, we get calls from people in February being like, hey, I'm just putting together my plan now for the year. And it's like, it's February.
Mhm.
It's it's not too late, but it's not early. Can you
Yeah.
can you maybe share a little bit about why you take that proactive approach and what it's helped you do?
Yeah, it the our planning and all the strategy and even all our hiring, it all like leads like it is starting now. And I think with our process in particular, we needed to define what our goals were. We needed to sort of lay all the groundwork. We needed to establish sophisticated landing pages aligned with our brand, our website. We needed time to set the table and then launch our campaign, and then also give it time to optimize itself. And then sort of when it really hit steam and sort of was getting all that information to sort of be optimized, it was at that key time of this summer where we needed leads. And so I think just being aware of that runtime and planning, even if you're, tired and thinking you're running towards the end of the year, start the process now to give yourself that runway so that next year you don't feel totally at a loss come summertime. Or I know your team can mobilize pretty quickly, but if your campaign sort of hitting its stride and it's late fall, that's great. But the
You
earlier the
kind of
better.
missed the
And
boat a
when do
little
you
bit.
need? Yeah, exactly. And we felt great. Like spring, there's a ton of leads, and it's volume, and it just the campaign picked up at the right time for us. So yeah, that worked out really well.
Awesome. That's a huge deal. And I think if everybody could just listen to this, if you can start the planning sooner than later, you'll also be the only princess at the ball because very few people are this proactive. So if you start working with companies like us or anybody, they're not buried. Whereas if you engage them in February and they are in the landscape, like if they're into supporting landscapers,
Yeah,
anywhere between January through April, they're going to be smoked with demand. So anyway, that's cool. So
absolutely.
to wrap up, ask everybody in terms of like a resource, an author, podcast, a speaker, somebody that's kind of inspired you. What would be something that you'd give a shout out to the audience
Yeah.
and go check them out?
So I've spoken about a few already. I'm gonna drop how many. I made a little list. I know you were gonna ask me. So a couple of recent books that I've read. 7 Habits, like I talked about. I think every single person should read that. I'm gonna have it
Cubby.
packaged into an audiobook and given to all my staff. I read one recently, Turn the Ship Around. I'm really bad with authors' names, but the title is Turn the Ship Around. It's about a submarine captain, his leadership style, and he did like one of the most remarkable turnarounds for this particular crew. And but his leadership style was very leader instead of leader follower, and that's really something that really resonated with me, and something I'm trying to infuse into how we organize ourselves. Podcasts. I'm a huge industry nerd. I listen to this one, so I'm really happy that there's new episodes rolling out. And Ultimate Landscape CEO with Jeffrey Scott down the States. He interviews a lot of business owners, a lot of consultants. It's a similar market segment as you, but he has all sorts of people in the States and different sizes. And I love absorbing and listening to how other people tackle things and manage the growth and how their businesses are organized, because everyone's is a little different. And then the last one is How I Built This with Guy Raz, which is more of a broad view entrepreneurial thing. But listening to all of them, I always get something. There's always something to apply.
Remarkably entertaining.
They're incredible. He is such a gifted host. And and I back to not being insular on our industry. There's like, we value when people come from outside with outside experience, but there's always something to bring in that can make you better. So that's sort of my suite right now.
I love it. What is it? One that you just inspired me to mention, because I think you might fit. Name of the actual book, so I want to make sure I get it. Is that it? The New Gold Standard. You heard that? Ritz-Carlton. It's like it's all about their customer service mantra of ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah, I have heard about that, possibly on this podcast. But yeah, okay, I should add that to my reading list.
And then How to Win Friends and Influence People. Are you probably I'm maybe under the impression that you've read through that one?
Oh, sorry, what was the title of that one?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes, I actually haven't read that one, and I actually on your most recent podcast being talked about as a classic from the 1930s.
Grunder, Marty brought it up.
Yeah, that was he had I thought there was a lot of parallels. Like he's at a different stage, but a lot of parallels with letting go and his view on how to treat people. I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, I mean he's a gem. For sure. Well, anyway, and so are you. And thank you for doing this. And thank you for everybody for listening to another episode
Thanks,
of the
Rob.
I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Thanks, Will.
Thanks.